Hello, everyone. This is an AI generated thing that I asked of YouTube's, I think it's Gemini or something, of Chasing the Dragon. And the reason why I chose this is because of a video that Tom Scott just put out, in which he's talking about the optimization of media and why everything is so boring. And it just seems to be this moment in which we are coming back down to earth and um, accepting the scenarios in which we would use the technology to our advantage and reacting to the negativities or the unforeseen outcomes of the tools is starting to make decisions for themselves. Now, um, I would say that in response to that video, in which Tom Scott says, well, it's only natural for us to try and find a happy medium as to what is popular and what is inoffensive, or just something that finds that sweet spot and hits all the right notes to the point for which it's ubiquitous. But if something is ubiquitous, it is no longer of novelty. It's commonplace, and therefore it is of no perceived value. Now, chasing the dragon is typically associated with a drug addiction, and again, even more commonly used in a description of someone that has a cocaine issue or an opioid. But typically, that's like the horse, right? He fell off the horse, he got on the horse again, that sort of thing. And as I've talked about, and many other media experts have highlighted over the past, I don't know, decade or more, if not the commonplace person, even in the instance that they decide to actually pay attention to such a thing that is abstract as the concept of being addicted to an inanimate object. But of course, the programmed responses are very very well known, and the extent for which all of these behavioral modifications or modifiers in which to keep you interested in a media product, which means that everything that you digest by opening up the phone is a product to be sold. And because of the marketing, which again is one of the concentrations of the history of propaganda, and the permutations by which you can shape and mold someone's desires, of course, with the pre existing characteristics of openness and agreeableness. So we humanity's default mode is actually mediocrity. It is not excellence. And you know, you can't find what is of novelty in a sea of mediocrity being drowned by 3 billion people's cat photos, or what they had for breakfast that morning. Because the great mistake is actually thinking that every person has something to contribute to a conversation. It's a big mistake to include everyone in something, especially when they have no expertise, no familiarity, no knowledge, and no decision making capacity in the planning of an operation or something like that. There's no reason for certain people to be in the room, and that's really how it should how actually how it is with the conversations that we have online, is because they're not intended necessarily for a widespread audience. But the quagmire is that we, even if we choose the privacy setting to keep it to within an inner circle of people, is that the concept or the idea communicated through such a posting will spread further than the original post. And it's in my experience, it looks like, or it feels like, that the moonshot is monetized. The ability to go viral is now behind a paywall, and so then it's even more challenging for anything that is of new and of novel value, in that it is something different from the normality, and breaks the the continuous tone of monotony. Because when you're surrounded by excellence, you're basically being stimulated by um, autistic cocaine. And this is why everyone seems to want to get on board with this tism, in order to be included in something, so as to explain their inadequacies, or to try and reason, or abstractly reason and grapple with the fact that they've become an addict in a society that for which we admonish addicts, and we cast them into a particular spotlight, and some of which that shade thrown at them is deserving, whereas some of it is not. But of course, the novelty is to spread the information, so it doesn't matter what information is to be shared. This was a common thing, they say, maybe 2 years ago. Upload yourself to the cloud, everything, upload your entire life, record everything, and then kill yourself. Because what else was there? And again, in a a shocking moment, if you think about it like this, that a person, by the time they reach the age of 20, digests and consumes more information than our grandparents did in their entire lives. And so we have this threshold in which the monkey brain, of course, this has been talked about by other experts, myself included, I suppose, at which the monkey brain can no longer handle the inputs. And you have these people who are self-diagnosing with like WebMD, and then they start internalizing all these symptoms, and everyone thinks they're retarded for some reason. It's not special to be retarded, I gotta tell you. Special needs is not what you think it is. And again, I also speak of from experience of having been put into the psych ward twice against my will, when there was no pre existing symptoms that should have put me in there in the first place. What put me in there was the fear. It was the fear of other people and the paranoia of other people. And what did they listen to? They listened to the oversharer, the person that put their lives online, and every little piece of what they said or did was magic because of their charisma and of their skill or whatever else, or their perceived expertise in something. And but the issue again, of course, is that even experts are fallible, and they're vulnerable to the influence of people's opinions that for which have no real basis in reality. Because just because they're yelling louder and there's more of them. I showed a video clip to my nephew today. It was recently restored, and it was from 1940 or 1941, colorized uh, film stock from uh, Berlin. And Berlin in 1941 was a beautiful and organized place. It really was. And I asked my nephew that if you didn't have any preconceived notions or knowledge of old Adolf, and you passed him on the street, would you know that he was a dictator? And the reason why I told him this, or that I used this as a moment to talk to him about how anyone can become a monster. And it's just that depending on the context and the environment that for which they've been brought up in, and the ideas and the concepts for which they latch onto and internalize, and then make themselves in the image of their idol or idols, which in the Bible is um, it's a heresy, right? To fashion oneself in the image of God, because you were already created in the image of God, not the interpretation of God through man as man sees God. And he knew this already, right? He understood, because well, he goes to church. He goes to church. He understands that people are corruptible, that individuals are corruptible. And I looked up, I showed him another example of a more recent artist. And I asked him different, which were morally gray in their capacity, to see what he would say. And I asked him of this other person, which has produced propaganda and it's not Goebbels. And I asked him, what if you saw this person, would you know that they have produced all of this propaganda? And that, what if, would you know that they were a monster if you passed them on the street? And he says, no, not really. And that's exactly the point, is that we give um we give authority to people only because they're visible. We don't give authority to people that we don't believe to have a credible reputation, because they have a history of conflict. But no one ever stopped to think about that moment at which, and sorry, in that moment, as to why that person creates the conflict. Why would that person be motivated to create that conflict when there's no previous moments in which that person did the same thing? You see, that's the difference between an addict and a conscious person is that the addict will continuously go back to the same stimuli no matter how much it hurts them, whereas a conscious person sees that there's a negative stimuli and then tries to work around it. So I believe that that's something that has come full circle for me. And when I started this video, I was not completely happy. Again, I have these moments, again, the great highs and lows of being a creative person and the vulnerability that comes with um, trying to maintain your place of visibility, because otherwise all of a sudden you don't have any more authority or you don't have any more popularity, and you've been delegitimized by all of these other voices and their opinions when they're not really worth listening to. And so that was another thing I wanted to see out of my nephew, was whether or not he could think independently, if he was thinking independently, or if he was just listening to the rumors and the lies that come from other people's mouths. Because what those people want to do is to remain in 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 that cave, in that addiction that feeds uh, a self-serving behavior. And what I mean by a self-serving behavior is something that which serves no other purpose except for um, the fact that you do it. It's performative in a way, right? In which you no longer understand or have an emotional attachment to something. This could even be a relationship, and yet you continue to do it anyway because there's a negative feedback, and you've internalized all these things that tell you that you should be doing this without breaking free of that entrapment. And that's chasing the dragon, is the entrapment, and not knowing that you are.